To the deep dive. Today, we're tackling something pretty challenging. We're looking at that intersection of ADHD, the self-regulation challenges, and oppositional defiant disorder, ODD, which is more about that pattern of refusal. Specifically, how this all plays out during the teenage years.
Which are turbulent anyway, right?
Exactly. And the source we're drawing from really captures that. It's from ADHD and ODD, Navigating Adolescent Challenges and Support. And there's this specific part, Episode 7. Teenagers with ADHD and ODD, when attitude levels up.
Levels up. That phrase really hits it, doesn't it? It's not just more difficulty, it's qualitatively different.
It absolutely is. Think about it like this. ADHD might give you, say, impulsivity, poor planning, maybe like a fast car with unreliable brakes. But then ODD adds this element where the driver actively wants to steer against directions, especially if someone else gives them. Put those together in a teen who's already naturally pushing for independence. The friction is, well, it's huge.
So our goal here isn't just to rehash the definitions. What we want to do is pull out the really core challenges the source points to, and crucially, the specific tools it suggests for actually managing things. Plus, there's an underlying message of hope we need to highlight, how to guide these kids without getting completely overwhelmed.
Okay, let's unpack this then. The source seems clear that the normal teenage push for autonomy gets kind of twisted, weaponized even, by this dual diagnosis. Where does it say this collision gets particularly dangerous?
Yeah, dangerous is the right word sometimes. The source identifies 3 main flashpoints. These aren't just minor irritations, they're often the center of major family conflict.
Okay, what's the first one?
The first is a really significant increase in risk-taking behaviors. Now, we know ADHD often involves impulsivity, right? Acting without fully thinking through consequences. But when ODD is in the mix, the risk-taking shifts. It becomes less about, oops, I didn't think, and more like, I'm doing this because you told me not to. Or at least the defiance adds fuel to the impulsive fire.
That's a huge difference psychologically.
Yeah.
It means just explaining the dangers logically probably won't work.
It might even backfire. Yeah. Exactly. If the root is opposition, logic can feel like another form of control to fight against. The source gives this kind of contrast. A teen with just ADHD might impulsively sneak the car out for a late-night burger run. Still risky, obviously, but the motive is maybe excitement or craving. But the teen with ADHD and ODD, they might impulsively take the car and drive recklessly because they just had their phone taken away 5 minutes ago. The risk becomes retaliation.
Wow. Okay, so the stakes just shoot way up. Legal trouble, physical danger.
Exponentially higher. And this high-stakes stuff often happens alongside the more grinding daily battle. Which brings us to the second flashpoint.
No.
Backtalk. And the source is clear. This isn't just typical teenage sarcasm or eye-rolling. It's often much more sophisticated.
Sophisticated backtalk. How does the ODD make it so different?
It becomes proactive argumentation. It's like their default mode is to undermine authority constantly. So in teens, this can look like really personal attacks or gaslighting, making the parent doubt their own reality or just constantly shifting blame. The parent ends up defending themselves instead of addressing the original issue, like homework or chores. The backtalk is actually a tactic, a way to delay, evade, and exhaust the parent.
Exhaustion's definitely the word. Okay, so we have intensified risk-taking, relentless backtalk. What's the third main flashpoint?
This one really seems to drive the other two in a way. It's the intense struggle around independence. This is the fundamental paradox, isn't it? Developmentally, all teenagers need to push for autonomy, to figure out who they are separate from their parents. But the diagnoses, the impulsivity from ADHD, the defiance from ODD, mean they often need more structure, more external support than their peers, not less.
It's a total catch-22.
Absolutely. The teen pushes for freedom, but their behavior screams, I can't handle it yet. So parents impose limits. But the teen, especially with ODD, sees those limits as unfair control, which fuels the opposition, leading to more behavior that requires limits, and round it goes. The source really stresses understanding this. The teen isn't just fighting the parent. They're often fighting this internal conflict between their natural drive to separate and their clinical need for support.
Recognizing that internal conflict seems key. It requires empathy, even when the behavior is incredibly difficult.
It does, and understanding that intensity helps us see why generic parenting advice often falls flat here. You need really specific tools for these specific challenges.
Right. So That leads us perfectly into the solutions. If the problem is this potent mix of defiance and impulsivity, the standard playbook isn't enough. Here's where it gets really interesting. What specific strategies are we given? What's in the toolkit?
Okay, the toolkit. The focus is on strategies that externalize the conflict a bit, take some of the emotional heat out of it, make it less about personal power struggles.
Makes sense. What's the first tool?
The first one recommended is using contracts. And not just a casual list of rules, but actual written agreements. Think about it. ADHD can affect memory and follow-through. The contract provides a concrete, visible reminder. And for the ODD component, when the teen says, "You never said that," or "That's not fair," the contract is right there. Actually, we both agreed to this, remember? It's written down right here.
Okay, I can immediately see a potential hurdle, though. Getting an already oppositional teen to sit down and agree to a contract? That sounds like setting yourself up for a battle royal. How do you even initiate that?
That's a totally valid concern, and the source emphasizes it's all about the process. The power isn't just in the final document, it's in how you create it. The key is collaboration. You don't just hand them the contract. You sit down together during a calm moment, definitely not mid-argument, and you involve them in drafting it. You might ask, okay, we agree curfew is important. What do you think is a fair consequence if curfew is missed by, say, 15 minutes? What about an hour?
So you give them some ownership, some perceived control over the terms.
Precisely. It shifts their role from being punished to being a partner in creating a fair system. It's harder to argue against a rule you helped write. Then, when a rule is broken, the conversation isn't, "You defied me." It's, "Okay, looks like the agreement we both made was broken. Let's look at what we decided the consequence would be." That shift is critical for managing ODD.
Okay, ownership through collaboration. That makes a lot of sense. And that probably ties into the next tool.
It does, directly. The second tool is establishing agreed-upon boundaries. And that phrase, agreed upon, is doing a lot of work there.
Why is that agreement part so vital?
Well, think about it from the ODD perspective. If a parent just lays down a law, no computer after 9 p.m., it can feel like an arbitrary power play. The automatic response might be defiance just for the sake of it. But if you discuss why the boundary is needed, maybe sleep, schoolwork, negotiate the specifics, and both agree, okay, we agree the computer goes off at 9, and if not, the consequence we agreed on is no computer tomorrow, then the teen has essentially consented. It removes the unfairness argument. They might still test the boundary, but they can't claim they weren't part of the decision.
And it's teaching a life skill too, right? Negotiation, consent.
Exactly. Managing expectations through mutual agreement, not just conflict. And the source also stresses these boundaries need to be super specific, not just be respectful. What does that actually mean? It means defining it. Respectful means waiting your turn to speak, using an inside voice, not calling names. Specificity closes loopholes that oppositional thinking loves to exploit.
Okay, contracts for clarity, agreed upon boundaries for fairness. But we're still dealing with kids who have intense emotions, right? Especially anger and frustration. Where does that energy go?
Excellent point. And that's the third key tool. Identifying and facilitating safe outlets for anger. The emotional intensity with ODD, sometimes combined with the frustration of ADHD challenges like executive function, it's a lot. It builds up like pressure. If you just try to clamp down on it, tell them to calm down, it often backfires. It needs somewhere to go.
So what kind of outlets are we talking about?
The source talks about proactively teaching redirection, finding structured, acceptable ways to release that intense energy. For some teens, it might be really physical stuff, running, boxing, lifting weights, martial arts, something that literally burns off the physical tension of anger. For others, it might be creative outlets playing loud music on an instrument, intense drawing or painting, maybe even a dedicated venting journal where they can write or scribble it all out. The key is that it's planned and permitted.
That sounds good, definitely. But let's be real for a second. If a parent is already drained from negotiating contracts and enforcing boundaries, finding the energy to, say, drive the teen to a gym or set up an art space, that's asking a lot. Isn't it easier just to demand they be quiet?
It feels easier in the moment, absolutely. But the source reframes this. It argues that facilitating these outlets is like preventative medicine. Yes, it takes energy up front, but compare that to the energy needed to deal with the fallout when that suppressed anger explodes, maybe into property damage, verbal abuse, or that high-stakes risk-taking we talked about. Investing time in the outlet now might save you hours of crisis management later. It should be seen as a non-negotiable part of the plan, almost like therapy or medication.
Okay, thinking of it as strategic energy investment makes sense. Preventative rather than reactive. So we have these tools, contracts, boundaries, outlets. But just having tools isn't enough, right? You need a way to use them effectively. We keep circling back to this tension. The P needs space to grow, but also needs guardrails. What's the big picture strategy? The operating philosophy the source recommends for walking this tightrope.
The overarching strategy, the thing that holds all these tools together, is the crucial act of balancing freedom with structure.
Okay, explain that balance. How does it work in practice?
Think of it like training wheels on a bicycle. The structure, the contracts, the boundaries, the routines, those are the training wheels. They're absolutely necessary right now because the teen's internal balance system, their self-regulation, impulse control, isn't fully developed or reliable yet, especially with ADHD and ODD. But the freedom, that's the actual riding of the bike. It's letting them steer, move forward, practice making choices within those boundaries. That's how they learn.
So the structure isn't meant to be permanent, ideally.
Exactly. It needs to be responsive. As the teen shows they can handle the current level of freedom reliably, maybe they consistently meet curfew according to the contract for a month. You might carefully loosen one of the training wheels a bit, extend the curfew by 15 minutes perhaps. With agreement, you grant a little more freedom based on demonstrated responsibility. But, and this is key, if they crash, if they violate the agreement significantly, the structure has to snap back into place immediately. Maybe the curfew reverts, or another agreed-upon consequence kicks in. This teaches competence through accountability, not just temporary compliance because they're scared of getting caught.
Responsive scaffolding. That makes sense. It allows for growth but provides safety. But goodness, this sounds emotionally exhausting for the parent or caregiver. Dealing with constant opposition, setting boundaries, managing consequences. It's easy to feel like you're failing or like the teen just hates you.
It is incredibly draining. And that's why the source wraps up with what might be the most important piece of this whole puzzle. It's the emotional anchor, the hope message that caregivers really need to internalize.
Okay, what is that core message?
It's simple but powerful. Yes, they still need you, even when they act like they don't. All that pushing away, the backtalk, the fighting for independence, even when it's expressed through really difficult ODD behaviors, it's often underneath it all a kind of a maladaptive way of testing the connection. They're pushing you hard. But unconsciously, they're watching. Will you give up? Will you abandon the structure? Will you still be there? Will you still love them through this? The fight, in a strange way, can be a developmental test. Passing it means holding on to the necessary structure while consistently showing them they are loved and valued, even when their behavior is unacceptable.
That reframes everything, doesn't it? It shifts it from, I'm locked in a battle with my kid, to, I'm providing the secure base my kid needs to navigate a really difficult phase.
Precisely. It's not about winning arguments. It's about holding steady through the storm.
Okay, so let's try to quickly synthesize this deep dive then. We started by acknowledging that ADHD plus ODD in teens really does level up the challenges, intensifying risk-taking, creating chronic backtalk, and making the natural push for independence incredibly fraught.
Right.
But then we looked at the specific toolkit, using collaborative contracts for clarity and buy-in, establishing very specific agreed-upon boundaries to reduce the sense of arbitrary control.
Yes.
And crucially, providing safe, planned outlets for that intense anger and frustration.
Absolutely essential.
And all of this operates under the main strategy of balancing freedom with responsive structure like those training wheels. And it's all anchored by remembering that core message. They still need you deeply, even when every signal seems to say the opposite.
You've got it. That really captures the essence of the source's guidance. And maybe, as a final thought for you to consider, building on this, we talked a lot about how the core conflict is often this fight for independence. Now, if the recommended solutions involve things like agreed-upon boundaries and contracts the teen helps create, think about what that process is really teaching. Is the goal just to manage the difficult behavior right now? Or is this whole structured, collaborative approach actually a kind of long-term training? A way to shift the dynamic from parent versus teen towards teaching the teen the skills they need to eventually set and uphold expectations for themselves as adults? That transition from external opposition to internal self-governance, maybe that's the ultimate measure of success here.